The following program is a paid advertisement from Burbidge and Ramsey, attorneys at law. For help, advice, and information before you go to traffic court, just bring your ticket to Burbidge and Ramsey.
Sit back, everybody, and fasten your seatbelts. It's time for another edition of Traffic Jam, the only show on television where you can find out everything you need to know about the traffic laws here in New Jersey. Hi, I'm Tony Caputo, and coming up on this edition of Traffic Jam, we'll bring you up to date on all of the latest laws and court decisions that affect every driver in the state. In our Down the Road segment, we'll tell you about new speeding laws that will let you cruise at 65 miles per hour legally, but you better not get caught speeding. You'll also learn about new changes to the drunk driving statute. In our new segment, It Could Happen to You, you'll find out how you could very easily be required to pay expensive surcharges to the State Division of Motor Vehicles for years. And you'll also learn how you can avoid paying those surcharges. New to this edition of Traffic Jam, a segment we'll call There Ought to Be a Law. You'll learn about some important rights that you think you have as a motorist, but really don't. As always, we'll have our Street Smart segment where we'll answer questions from people out on the street. And we'll also try to shed some light on a motor vehicle offense which affects more than 1 million people in New Jersey driving on the revoked list. Back once again in our studio are two seasoned attorneys from the law firm of Burbidge and Ramsey. Paul Doniti, the law firm's trial attorney, is here to give us legal advice. Paul has been practicing law here in New Jersey since 1977. And Paul's partner, Bob Ramsey, is also here. Bob has been practicing traffic law since 1980. Gentlemen, welcome back to Traffic Jam.
It's good to see you again, Tony.
Here we go again.
One more time. Well, let's get rolling. We have a lot to talk about because a lot has happened since our last show. Let's start with our Down the Road segment. Paul, I understand there are new speeding laws in the state of New Jersey. What's the story there?
You might say, Tony, that New Jersey finally came up to speed with 48 of the other states by raising some of the roads in New Jersey to 65 miles per hour. The Commissioner of Transportation will be designating approximately 400 miles of roadway, including roadway on the New Jersey Turnpike, the Garden State Parkway, and the interstates, where you can travel at a maximum speed of 65. However, don't speed and get caught, because if you're in a 65 mile per hour zone and you get a speeding ticket, a careless driving ticket, a reckless driving ticket, or a ticket for not using a turn signal, or some other moving violations, the fines are going to be doubled in a 65 mile per hour zone. So be careful while you're out there.
So New Jersey is one of the last states in the nation to change that law.
It's not exactly Johnny on the spot, Tony.
The governor basically kind of reversed herself on this. For a long time, she fought against it. So now, on parts of the interstate highways that go through the state, as well as the three main toll roads, the Turnpike, the Parkway, and the Atlantic City Expressway, speed limit and portions of that will be 65 miles an hour. The key is this, as Paul said, it's not only going to include the doubling of penalties for moving violations like careless driving, but if you're speeding 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, fines could be doubled for you. So you've got to be careful that you don't go too fast. The points are going to stay the same, but the money is going to be very, very significant.
Bob, how about the police and the courts? How do they know that radar guns the police use are accurate in those situations? I've heard a lot of people say to me, well, you know, I was just going with the rest of traffic. I wasn't speeding at all, and then they wind up getting a speeding ticket.
Well, the unit itself, which was called a K-55 radar unit, has been scientifically found to be reliable by the New Jersey courts. But the police have to go through a procedure before they can put it into use every time they go out on the roadway. Now, this involves testing it with tuning forks and making sure that all the equipment inside of the machine is working properly. In other words, they use the tuning forks to kind of simulate the speed at which a vehicle traveling toward them would be. They test the unit both before they put it into use and after. And if it's working before it goes out and it's working after it comes back, the presumption is that all the speeds that it recorded during that time period were accurate. And of course, the police who use this machine have to go through a lot of training and observation of vehicles and things of that nature. They actually have to have a license to operate the speeding machine.
I can't help but think of the new Michael J. Fox Lay's commercial where they have the speeding gun and they shoot the waitress and she's doing 75 miles per hour.
Well, she must be eating too many potato chips, then, I guess.
Except in New Jersey, Tony, you wouldn't be able to use that laser gun at the present time. It's still in litigation whether or not that's a accepted scientific device in this state.
Has that always been the case?
Well, it's a relatively new device, so it's being tested out in different jurisdictions at the present time.
Bob, I also understand there are new changes to drunk driving laws. Why don't you get us up to date on that situation?
Well, drunk driving is a very serious offense, and it becomes more serious every time you're convicted of drunk driving. So there's a base penalties for a first offender, and they get harsher for a second offense, and very, very harsh for a third offense. In fact, for a third offense, you have to go to jail for a long time. The issue previously in New Jersey was whether or not if you had a conviction from another state besides New Jersey, that would come back to haunt you here in New Jersey. For example, let's say for the sake of argument that you're caught and convicted of drunk driving in New Jersey and you have another conviction, say, in Oklahoma 5 years ago. Does the Oklahoma conviction count against you in New Jersey? Well, now, if you're a drunk driver in New Jersey, you've got big problems because a prior conviction with a breathalyzer reading of 0.10 or greater anywhere in the United States will count against you in New Jersey. Also, if you refuse to take a breathalyzer test in another state, that will also count against you in New Jersey. If you're a drunk driver in New Jersey, be warned, you're in big trouble if you get caught.
Okay. Let's move on to our It Could Happen to You segment. Paul, there are so many thousands of people paying expensive surcharges in New Jersey to the State Division of Motor Vehicles. How in the world do people get in such a big, expensive mess, Paul?
They plead guilty, Tony. That's really the shame of the situation, is that many people get a ticket and they'll either go to the violation bureau and pay the ticket, or they'll go into court and plead guilty without ever stopping to think, do I have a defense to this ticket? And unfortunately, the fine isn't the end of the ticket. After you pay your fine, if you are assessed 6 or more points over a 3-year period, the Division of Motor Vehicle is going to surcharge you. And the surcharge starts at $100 for the 6 points, and every point thereafter is another $25. Now, there's other offenses which carry their own surcharges, such as drunk driving. If you're convicted of drunk driving, that's $1,000 a year for 3 years. Or if you get caught driving with a revoked license, that's $250 a year for 3 years. Or if your license is simply expired, that's $100 a year for 3 years. So what I would suggest to the motorists out there is, hey, before you go to court and pay that ticket, stop and at least ask an attorney, are there any other consequences I'm facing besides paying a fine?
Sure, because let's face reality here, Bob. There are a lot of people that would not be able to face or pay those surcharges. Is there anything you, in your position, could do for them?
Well, there's nothing that I can do for them personally except maybe lend them the money, and I don't have the money to lend them. What they've got to do is this. They can borrow the money from somebody else if they want to. They can go down to the Division of Motor Vehicles because the Division of Motor Vehicles has payment programs that people can enter into. They can actually pay them with credit cards. And if they're absolutely desperate and they have no way of paying the surcharge, they can't even afford the installment payments, there's a provision in the United States bankruptcy law that would allow them to get into a wage earner plan and pay the surcharge off over a long period of time. In fact, sometimes as long as 5 years. So those are options. The one thing I wanted to mention, though, and touch upon something Paul said a moment ago, deals with points. The way it works is this. If you are assessed 6 points over a 3-year period, you pay the surcharge. It's $100 a year, every year for 3 years, if you're assessed 6 points. Now, some people are really kind of good drivers. They'll get 2 points in 1 year and then lose them the next year because they didn't get any tickets. And then in the second year, they may get a 4-point ticket. They had no previous points on their license. They're going to pay surcharges because they've gotten those points.
Even though their abstract might show they have less than 6 points. And that's what confuses a lot of people. They come into our office and say, I got this surcharge, but I don't have 6 points. But it's the assessment of those points, not the accumulation of those points, which governs whether or not a surcharge is initiated.
It's confusing for the people because the DMV in their literature actually uses the word accumulation, but that's not what the law says. Right. And people get confused by it. So my advice to clients coming in, don't plead guilty. Come and get some legal advice and see if something can be done to avoid these points.
Gentlemen, well said. That'll wrap up our first segment here of Traffic Jam. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, you're going to find out that some of the rights you think you have in traffic court don't really exist. All of that and much more coming up on Traffic Jam.
Riverview Studios. For over 25 years, we've worked behind the scenes, calling the shots, creating programs that teach, entertain, sell, and motivate. Award-winning programs and commercials that work, bringing customers to our clients. We've always been there, diligently attending to quality and detail. Riverview Studios, over 25 years of excellence.
39, 714 on fire 2. Ready on the stop? Static in the background. Overall actor. Are you out with that party?
Just lost it by the time my lookup came back. She was going for it. It appears that she's local. I'll just keep an eye out for her.
Some motor vehicle tickets can cause you big trouble. Serious charges like driving on the revoked list or driving without insurance require huge fines, a license loss, and for a second offense, mandatory jail. Now it's easy to get the help and advice you need for your traffic case. Just pick up the phone and call Burbidge and Ramsey. If you bring your ticket, your consultation will be free. When you need help with a serious traffic offense, just bring your ticket to Burbidge and Ramsey.
The way New Jersey traffic laws work, if you've got a ticket, you've got a problem. A potentially serious legal problem that can cost you lots of money and disrupt your life for years into the future.
The good news is there is a simple solution. Just take your ticket and bring it to Burbidge and Ramsey. You'll get all the information you need to know about your own traffic case. And best of all, when you bring your ticket with you, your consultation is free. Don't let one of these become a problem for you. Just bring your ticket to Burbidge and Ramsey.
Welcome back to Traffic Jam. I'm Tony Caputo. There ought to be a law. Paul and Bob are going to tell us about some of the rights that people usually think they have in court, but they really don't have. And Paul, let's start with you.
Tony, I don't know how many times I've heard this, but people come into the office, they go, I got pulled over by a cop for speeding, and then he wouldn't even show me what speed I was going. I asked him, let me see the radar gun, and he told me, stay in your car. Now, don't I have a right to see that radar gun? And you know what I have to tell them, Tony? No. You don't have a right. It would be ridiculous for an officer to invite you into his car. I mean, there is a security problem when you're out on the highway, and officers want you to stay right where you are, behind the wheel. You do not have a right to see the radar.
Every once in a while you get a police officer, though, who's extremely courteous to the people, and he brings them back and shows them on a voluntary basis what their speed was. It's locked into the K55. But there's no requirement that the police do this, and of course people don't understand that, and they get angry sometimes.
If I choose to, and that's totally discretionary on my part, or on the officer's part, if he wants to, if a person that he stopped for speeding wants to see the radar unit, that's the officer's option if he wants him to come back and look, to have him look at the radar unit in the car, and that satisfies in their mind that they were in fact speeding sometimes. But there again, I emphasize that that's officer discretion and it's not a requirement.
I'm sure you have a story to share with us as well.
Let me think. Okay, here's one. People are in an accident, and at the accident scene they make statements to the police officer and they describe how it happened. And then they come to the office and they read over the discovery, which is the police report that we get, and according to the clients, it says, well, this is not what I said to the police officer. I'm going to go down there and demand that they change that police report. Because they're afraid that their insurance companies are going to see that they actually did run into the tree at 60 miles an hour instead of the tree jumping out in front of the road at them. So basically what I tell them, and I tell them kind of gently if I can, that you don't have any right to have a police officer change or amend his police report in any way. It's the police report, belongs to the police. It's a government-type document. Now, sometimes you can go to the police and ask them to give, basically take your statement and attach your statement to the police report, but you don't have any right to get the police to change their police report because you want them to.
You're talking rights, Paul. What about a driver's right to have a lawyer to defend them in traffic court?
Tony, you always have a right to a lawyer in traffic court. However, you don't always have a right to a public defender. Our Supreme Court has held that you can have a public defender in traffic court if you face a consequence of magnitude, which means that you're facing either exorbitantly high fines, a loss of your life,